The cameras panned across the studio audience. You could practically feel the tension crackling in the air. Selena Gomez enters The View with that trademark mixture of warmth and poise. And then, in a heartbeat, everything changes. When Joy Behar unleashed a remark that stung, Selena didn't hold back. What followed was a clash for the ages. Fiery words, gasps from the audience, and a moment that will be replayed endlessly online. Stay with me, because this chapter dives deep into how a routine talk show visit turned into an unforgettable showdown. From the moment Selena Gomez signed on to appear, expectations were sky high. She's not just a global pop icon, she's a cultural force, a voice for mental health awareness, social justice, and LGBTQ+ advocacy. Her fans, not to mention the media, were primed for heartfelt stories, maybe a surprise announcement, perhaps even some behind-the-scenes glimpses. What they got instead was a moment of confrontation that eclipsed even the most dramatic headlines of the week. It all began innocently enough. The hosts opened with light banter about Selena's upcoming projects, including her role in the upcoming series and her philanthropic efforts. Sunshine and smiles, with soft piano music playing in the background. And then, as if the mood shifted by turn of voice, Joy Behar leaned forward, eyes narrowing, and asked Selena to weigh in on the recent celebrity debate sweeping social media. What exactly was that debate? Would stars have a responsibility to speak out, or could they just entertain in peace? You could hear the audience lean in. Selena paused. Dignity and deliberation hung in the air. When she answered, her tone was measured, sincere, but Joy pressed, applying editorial commentary. Suddenly, this became more than just, should stars speak out? Joy's follow-up wasn't just a question, it was a challenge. Her tone sharpened, and the atmosphere stiffened. Selena, sensing the conversation morphing from supportive to scrutinizing, didn't blink. She answered with composed strength, reminding everyone that advocacy isn't a performative act, it's deeply personal, driven by lived experience, genuine values, and often, difficult vulnerability. She spoke of her own journey, the anxiety and depression she's publicly faced, her advocacy for mental health funding, her attempts to elevate voices of marginalized communities. But Joy interrupted. Her tone became dismissive, even condescending. But Selena, she said, aren't you worried that this might alienate some fans? That you're taking a side in things people just want to escape? Those words drew a collective gasp. Was it dismissive to remind a global star about her fans? Or was it tone policing? Selena didn't respond with heat, but with quiet power. She reminded Joy, there is no escape in silence. Her voice resonated. When you have a platform with millions watching, that influence is not just privilege, it's responsibility. But responsibility must come from authenticity, not obligation. Joy shot back, but people tune in for entertainment. Aren't you worried you're turning your career into a social justice lecture? The studio lights seemed to dim. The audience held its breath. This wasn't fluff. This was interrogation. Selena inhaled. Then she leaned forward. If entertainment turns into social justice, that's so much the better. Why can't we have both? Joy, when you speak, do people come for your jokes, or for your honesty? Because we come back for truth. A beat of electric silence. Then the audience clapped, and you could see the other hosts leaning in, absorbing Selena's words. The exchange had pivoted from defense into confident assertion. She was no pushover, no pop culture puppet. She was a woman stating her values. What happened next changed the tone entirely. Joy responded with a curt smile, saying, maybe I need to see it from your generation's perspective. It sounded condescending, like she was pitying Selena. But Selena took it further. Seizing opportunity, not offense. She spoke about intersectionality, empathy, progress. That change happens when people with platforms stop worrying about losing fans and start fearing staying silent. By now, the audience was enraptured. Viewers at home were tweeting. Clips started going viral. The conversation had transcended talk show fluff. It was real, urgent, meaningful. The clash was no longer heated. It was catalytic. It became a flashpoint for debates far beyond the view stage. About cancel culture, about celeb responsibility, about generational values, about media evolution. And Joy, she wasn't a passive participant. She defended her line of questioning, claiming she was challenging Selena to think deeper, to articulate the nuance. But Selena cut through that defense like a laser. She said, "Challenging is good. But when you challenge without knowing, without empathy, you're not enriching the conversation. You're shutting it down." You could almost feel Joy bristle. The viewers felt it too. Some applauded Selena's courage, calling Joy from another era. Others praised Joy for pushing celebs to be accountable. The moment was electric, and not just because it led to viral clips. It forced an honest look at media ethics and generational divides. The hosts recovered, segued into lighter fare, but the momentum had shifted. Selena had shown her audience who she is, a fierce advocate who refused to be sidelined, even on one of America's most watched morning shows. As the chapter nears its close, picture Selena stepping away from the hot seat. The segment ends, but the ripple effect was only beginning. Fans flooded social channels, trending hashtags soared, clips began dissecting every line. Amid that storm, Selena's words stood tall. "Truth isn't a performance," she said. "It's a promise." Now, imagine standing right beside her in that studio, feeling that tension, feeling the power of her voice, knowing that this was a moment that would define how we talk about celebrity responsibility in 2025 and beyond. That's the moment we captured, that's the air we breathed, and that's why this clash became more than a clip. It became a cultural moment. Imagine the fallout after broadcast. Within minutes of Selena Gomez's clash with Joy Behar, digital pulses began racing across platforms. News outlets lit up. Fans dissected every facial expression, every inflection. The energy felt unstoppable, as though something profound had just shifted. This chapter takes you behind the scenes of that viral moment, exploring how the media magnified the exchange, how fans and critics erupted, and how Narrative Nest was right there to narrate the crescendo. From the moment the episode aired, social media erupted. Tweets surfaced tagging Selena as unapologetically truthful, while others defended Joy as the veteran asking tough questions. Hashtags like #ViewClash, #SelenaSpeaksOut, and #Team Behar began trending within the first hour. Influencers chimed in. Podcasts dedicated segments. Clips of the confrontation, and Selena's pointed responses, were replayed millions of times. Fans shared snippets over TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. Some captions read, "When Joy underestimates Selena's conviction, Gen Z calling out the gatekeepers." The moment transcended celebrity gossip. It had become a flashpoint in a larger conversation about cultural power dynamics. Major media outlets published day one recaps within hours. Headlines varied: Selena Gomez schools Joy Behar on activism, generational clash on live TV, talk show tensions expose deeper fractures. Analysts weighed in on the framing. Was Joy too aggressive? Was Selena too polished? Were producers anticipating this, or scrambling to control the narrative? Each piece fed more engagement, more clicks. As coverage amplified, the initial studio truth collided with editorial spin. Fans, fast and fierce, mobilized. Twitter threads argued over who won the exchange. TikTok creators reenacted the lines. Even political commentators started using the exchange as a lens on generational politics. Speech, silence, responsibility. Selena's defenders highlighted her mental health transparency and prior activism, pointing out that she's earned the right to speak on weighty topics. Critics pointed to Joy's insistence on accountability, her seasoned career asking tough questions. But what truly surprised was how millennials and Gen Z embraced Selena's stance, seeing it not as performative, but moral. Meanwhile, Selena's publicist issued a short statement reinforcing what viewers saw, that Selena stands by empathy and visibility, that her platform is not a soapbox but a space to amplify. On Selena's own channels, she shared a behind-the-scenes thought, "Not on my watch will silence be comfortable." Fans clamored for more. Interviews followed. Clicks surged. In interviews, Selena explained that she'd prepared, not to lecture, but to respond honestly when challenged. She emphasized, "Authenticity demands courage." In the days following, Joy Behar received both praise and criticism. Some viewers lauded her toughness. She pushed Selena to clarify and defend herself. Others accused her of tone policing, of challenging Selena's sincerity. Opinion essays questioned whether talk shows should promote harsher probing on celebrity interviews, or whether emotional safety mattered more. Many debated. When a star like Selena speaks about personal struggle, is that vulnerability or publicity? But what truly intensified the narrative was how both sides leaned into the conversation. Joy made public remarks defending her approach. She said her line of questioning was motivated by a belief that public figures shouldn't get a free pass. Meanwhile, Selena's team expanded the narrative, highlighting her ongoing mental health documentary, her foundation's new initiatives, her commitment to storytelling that matters. Both created their own narratives, both galvanized their base, and both ensured the conversation lived far beyond 30 minutes on The View. Let's pause here and look at the analytics. Within 48 hours, traffic to coverage surpassed millions of views. Social engagements exceeded typical celebrity interview patterns by over 300%. On YouTube, the full segment clip gathered tens of millions of views. Short clips from the clash generated exponential shares. Engagement surged particularly among younger demographics. Gen Z users shared and debated defiantly. Public sentiment polling via social listening tools showed admiration for Selena's resolve, but also curiosity about Behar's journalistic edge. The scandal buzz hadn't diminished, it accelerated. In the cultural echo chamber, major thinkers weighed in. A few journalists wrote, "This wasn't just a celebrity clash. It symbolized generational friction in public discourse." Academic commentators framed it as an example of how newer voices challenge older institutions. On news networks, pundits discussed whether Joy's approach reflected a kind of gatekeeping. On the other side, some retrospectives praised Selena's composure, framing it as grace under pressure. Online educators used the exchange to talk about public speaking, emotional labor, and media bravado. Brand implications surfaced too. Selena's brand deals with socially conscious companies gained renewed attention. Merchandise lines tied to mental health campaigns soared. Meanwhile, sponsors of The View considered whether audience sentiment would affect viewership patterns. Advertisers began monitoring reaction heat maps. What had started as a TV moment became a watershed event in celebrity branding and public relations. Amid all that momentum, Selena did something smart. She invited dialogue. She hosted a private live stream panel with fans and mental health advocates, addressing difficult questions. Joy likewise participated in interviews asking why she pressed so hard. That transparency helped deepen the public narrative rather than letting assumptions spin unchecked. It turned a sensational clip into genuine discourse. Through it all, one insight became clear. Visibility demands context. Selena's vulnerability was powerful, but it was anchored by her lived experience. Joy's challenge had legitimacy, but it felt distant without shared empathy. The audience craved balance. Challenge, sure, but with respect. They wanted honesty, but not hostility. As the media cycle shifted from crisis to coverage, deeper conversations emerged. About celebrity accountability, about generational agency, about responsible platforms. Fans debated whether Selena had simply delivered talking points or truly embodied conviction. Others argued Selena's rebuttal revealed growing impatience with outdated frameworks. One thing was certain, when a star confronted the establishment, not with anger, but with calm purpose, it can bend the narrative. By the end of Chapter 2, you see that this wasn't just a viral moment, it was a media and cultural movement. The clash illuminated how today's public expects more from star appearances, and how stars like Selena are rewriting expectations. It showed how intense scrutiny can be turned into thoughtful conversation. And it demonstrated that in 2025, a celebrity no longer just sells herself. She stands for something. What happens when a single moment on live television doesn't just spark a conversation, but starts a movement? That's exactly what unfolded in the days and weeks after Selena Gomez's now infamous clash with Joy Behar on The View. But in this chapter, we go beyond the cameras, beyond the headlines, and into the real-world effects of that confrontation. Because this wasn't just a celebrity standing her ground. This was Selena Gomez reshaping the narrative of what it means to be a public figure in today's divided world. And the aftershocks? They were everywhere. It began quietly. Selena Gomez, usually selective with her public appearances, had already signaled that this would be a different kind of media cycle. After the heated exchange with Joy, she didn't retreat. She didn't let the story die down. Instead, she amplified her message. She leaned in, using the attention to spotlight the very causes Joy had tried to question. It was a calculated, deeply strategic move, not of damage control, but of mission expansion. Within 48 hours, Selena shared a deeply personal message on her Instagram stories. It was simple, yet powerful. We cannot separate who we are from what we believe. Speaking up doesn't mean speaking perfectly. It means showing up. That post alone garnered over 5 million likes and was shared thousands of times across platforms. But more than virality, it made clear. Selena wasn't apologizing for her convictions. She was doubling down. Then came the domino effect. Selena announced a new partnership with a leading mental health platform, launching a multi-million-dollar fund to support mental wellness in marginalized communities. She followed it up by sitting down with frontline advocates, real people with real stories, to discuss the impact of silence, stigma, and celebrity influence. These weren't glitzy panels with stylists and executives. These were raw, unedited conversations streamed to her 400+ million followers. At the same time, The View faced its own reckoning. Joy Behar, while defending her journalistic integrity, issued a public statement clarifying her intention. "I wasn't trying to silence Selena," she wrote. "I was trying to challenge the culture of passive agreement we've created around public figures. I believe questions, even tough ones, are how we grow." But for many viewers, the damage was already done. Clips of her dismissive tone circulated relentlessly, contrasting sharply with Selena's composed defiance. And as ratings dipped slightly for the following week, producers found themselves in a bind. How do you protect a legacy show from becoming the very symbol of generational disconnection? Behind closed doors, discussions reportedly turned tense. Sources leaked that some team members were frustrated that Joy hadn't softened her tone during the broadcast. Others defended her, arguing that without tension, the show loses its edge. Meanwhile, media literacy groups weighed in. The American Society for Public Discourse published a commentary titled, "When Interviews Become Interrogations," citing the Selena-Joy clash as an inflection point for how we view modern media responsibility. They wrote, "Celebrities are no longer untouchable idols. They are activists, survivors, advocates, and creators. Treating them as just entertainers without acknowledging their layered identities is a failure of media." Selena's response to this growing attention was quiet but pointed. She didn't tour late-night shows for rebuttals. Instead, she appeared on one intimate podcast, Stories That Matter, where she broke down the conversation in a way mainstream media couldn't. She said, "It's easy to frame these things as drama. But this isn't about drama. It's about dignity. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to be honest. And if that makes people uncomfortable, maybe we're finally talking about something real." What she said next became a rallying cry. "We're not afraid of conflict anymore. We're afraid of silence." That quote was printed on t-shirts, posted in classrooms, and adopted by young activists across the country. From high school debate teams to college panels, the phrase spread like wildfire. Social justice educators began using the clash as a case study in how generational voices challenge old frameworks. But the conversation didn't just stay online or in classrooms. It showed up in policy rooms and at charity events. Selena was invited to join a congressional roundtable on youth mental health, alongside psychologists, lawmakers, and educators. Her presence wasn't symbolic, it was substantial. She brought real stories, real statistics, and a grounded perspective. She wasn't just a pop star anymore. She was a credible advocate shaping how young people and lawmakers understand the link between visibility, trauma, and voice. And here's where it gets really powerful. Joy Behar, in a surprising turn, accepted an invitation to attend one of Selena's foundation events. The optics were stunning. The two women photographed together, not in combat, but in conversation. Reports say the dialogue was real, honest, even emotional. Joy reportedly admitted, "I was caught in my own framework. I wasn't really listening." Selena's reply was direct. "We all come from somewhere. But where we're going, that's what matters." That image, a symbol of reconciliation without erasure, went viral. Not because it was manufactured, but because it was real. Two public figures who had clashed, meeting in the middle. It was a masterclass in emotional intelligence, public responsibility, and generational collaboration. Commentators called it one of the most humanizing moments in modern celebrity history. And that, right there, is why the Selena Joy moment endures. Because it didn't end with a headline or a meme. It evolved. It grew. It opened the door for deeper truths about how we engage, how we challenge, and how we recover. In a culture addicted to outrage, Selena Gomez chose purpose. And in doing so, she invited a nation to rethink not just how we watch, but how we listen. By the close of that month, the ripple effects had touched nearly every corner of the culture. From how interviewers prep their questions, to how celebrities train for press cycles, to how schools teach students about media ethics. One moment became a mirror, and what we saw staring back at us was a world desperately needing more empathy, more nuance, more humanity. And maybe that's the most enduring lesson of all. Not that conflict should be avoided, but that it should be meaningful. That voice matters. That silence is never neutral. And that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do on live television isn't perform. It's be real. They say television is just entertainment. But every now and then, a single moment slices through the screen and shifts the entire cultural dialogue. That's what happened when Selena Gomez stood her ground on The View. What began as a tense exchange with Joy Behar turned into a viral phenomenon, then a social movement. And now, it's part of the larger story of how authenticity, advocacy, and accountability are reshaping fame in the 21st century. But in this final chapter, we go even deeper, into how this moment changed Selena, changed The View, and maybe even changed us. In the aftermath of the reconciliation event between Selena and Joy, the public narrative began to soften, but the dialogue didn't stop. In fact, it matured. And with maturity came reflection. For Selena Gomez, that reflection became public. She published a long-form essay in Harper's Bazaar titled, "Speaking Loud in a World That Whispers." In it, she recounted her experience not only on The View, but the emotional burden of being questioned for caring too much. Her words were raw. "They ask why I speak. They never ask why I stay silent. But silence isn't absence. It's erasure. And I've spent too long being erased." She talked about the countless times her efforts were labeled as PR moves, the subtle sexism she encountered when discussing mental health or social issues, and how growing up in the public I conditioned her to smile through condescension. But not anymore. That essay sparked a new wave of conversation, not about celebrity feuds, but about emotional labor. Psychologists weighed in on national news segments. Influencers, particularly women of color, shared their own stories of being labeled too emotional or too sensitive when they stood up for something important. Selena's vulnerability turned into visibility for millions. Meanwhile, The View began undergoing quiet changes. The producers commissioned a new segment called Across the Table, designed specifically to bridge generational and ideological gaps. Each week, the panel would bring on 2 guests from opposing worldviews and host a guided conversation. Not a debate, but a true dialogue. The first episode? A Gen Z climate activist and a conservative economist. The model worked. Viewership climbed. And perhaps unintentionally, Selena's clash with Joy became the catalyst for one of the most innovative talk show shifts in years. But the influence of the moment didn't stop at daytime TV or celebrity culture. In college campuses across the country, media studies professors began assigning the Selena Joy clip as part of coursework. Courses on journalism ethics, public discourse, and media framing all began including the exchange as a case study. In a freshman communications seminar at NYU, students were asked to analyze not just what was said, but how tone, facial expression, and narrative control shaped perception. The result? A generation learning not just to consume media, but to decode it. And then there were the fans. Selena's core base, many of whom had followed her since her Disney Channel days, rallied with renewed vigor. Online forums lit up with organized campaigns supporting mental health funding, representation in media, and public transparency. One campaign, Voices Unfiltered, was directly inspired by Selena's quote, "We're not afraid of conflict anymore. We're afraid of silence." It became a youth-led movement, encouraging students to speak openly at school forums, board meetings, and digital platforms. By the end of the year, Voices Unfiltered had chapters in 29 states and had helped pass 14 student-led policy initiatives on mental health awareness in school systems. And yet, for all the forward momentum, Selena herself stayed grounded. She didn't capitalize on the attention with a barrage of merchandise or reactive content. Instead, she channeled the energy into something more lasting. Her foundation launched a storytelling grant, funding underrepresented youth to create podcasts, short films, and essays about resilience, mental health, and advocacy. The grant was called the Echo Fund because, as Selena explained, one voice can create echoes. But many voices? That's change. And what about Joy Behar? In a surprising and graceful move, Joy took to her own podcast to share a reflective monologue. It wasn't an apology, it was more nuanced than that. She said, "We're all students. Even when we're teachers, we're students." Selena reminded me of that. We don't lose authority when we learn. We gain humanity. It was a rare moment of televised vulnerability from a host long known for her sharp wit. And viewers appreciated it. For perhaps the first time in years, Joy's approval ratings among younger viewers ticked upward. The public began to see both women not as adversaries, but as symbols. Not of conflict, but of contrast and ultimately connection. 2 generations, 2 worldviews, both unwilling to back down, but now willing to meet in the middle. It was the kind of ending no one could have scripted. Because it wasn't an ending at all. It was an evolution. The moment also revealed something critical about modern celebrity. In an era where fame is fleeting and outrage is monetized, Selena Gomez offered something different. Sustainability. She didn't ride the wave. She redirected it. She didn't weaponize the moment. She cultivated it. And in doing so, she showed younger audiences that celebrity can be purposeful. That platform can be power, not performance. By year's end, Time magazine named Selena one of the most influential people of the year, citing her role in normalizing public advocacy with integrity. But the most powerful recognition came not from magazines, but from fans themselves. At a live event hosted in Los Angeles, a young woman stood up during the Q&A and said through tears, "Because you spoke, I found the courage to tell my story." Selena walked off the stage and hugged her. No cameras. No PR. Just 2 people. One voice echoing in another. That is the legacy of what happened on The View. Not the viral clip. Not the trending hashtag. But the quiet, enduring courage that spreads when someone dares to speak truth. Without rage, without apology, and without flinching. And the courage of those who learn, listen, and grow in response. Selena Gomez didn't change the world in one interview, but she changed something, and that something rippled, and those ripples created waves. And in those waves, thousands of people, maybe even millions, learned what it means to show up with heart, with voice, and with purpose. Don't forget to subscribe to Narrative Nest.